Hello and welcome to Mind, Body, Sleep, the podcast for anyone out there who wants to understand and recover from insomnia using a holistic perspective. I'm Beth, Kendall, your host. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I hope wherever you all are today that it is a lot warmer than it is here in Minnesota. We are having some cold weather. I think it's -20 Fahrenheit. And I am so grateful to live in a condo building where we have plenty of heat from our giant boiler. And I don't have to go outside in the cold today. So today's episode is kind of a spontaneous one. Normally I plan ahead for my episodes and I kind of roll them around in my mind for a while before I hit record. But today I am coming right off a group call within the community. And I am really loving these group calls. I love the way the community members come together. I love the way they share their insights. It's a very collaborative experience during the call. And as much as I'm guiding them, they are also helping me learn as well. So one of the things that came up recently in the community that led to this discussion in today's call was this perception of the recovery process. And I think a lot of times people think that this recovery process is going to be something awful, that it's going to be something hard and just like, this really difficult thing, this like almost heavy, like there's this heavy component to that. And, when I think back on my own recovery process, I didn't have that experience. I had a much lighter experience. Now, I think back then there were some differences because I really was going the lone road. There were no recovery stories. There were no, hope stories like I share here on the podcast. I was sort of creating my own path. So that may have worked to my favor in some way. But I didn't find the recovery process to be this really hard, heavy thing. I found it for the most part to be a very hopeful process because prior to that, I really just thought I was stuck with insomnia. I really thought this was going to be my life forever. I just hadn't found anyone my whole life that could help me understand it in a way that worked for me. I was convinced I had something physically wrong with me. And I think just the understanding of insomnia as something that wasn't happening to me, but simply something that my mind had sort of invented and honed, and something I was doing really well, to be quite honest with you. I had a PhD in insomnia. But having that realization, it was very hopeful to me because I realized, well, this is something that is changeable. This is something that I can work with. So I knew I was going in the right direction. I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I knew I was going in the right direction. So as you know from past podcasts, that I have always been driven by a deep sense of curiosity. And this is something that has served me well. And there is one particular sentence when I think back that really helped me during that time, and it still to this day helps me. I use it quite a lot in my life. And that one sentence is, "Isn't that interesting? Oh, isn't that interesting? Oh, that sleep anxiety is showing up after all this time. Isn't that interesting? Wow, after all that worry about the trip, I ended up sleeping okay. Isn't that interesting?" That one sentence, "Isn't that interesting?" helped me. I didn't realize it at the time until I was getting ready for the group call today. But looking back, I see why it was so helpful. And I think the reason it was so helpful was because it did inject a layer of curiosity into the experience. It did create some distance from what I was experiencing. So I was less identified with it and more curious about it. It did take me out of judgment, right? Judgment about what was happening. And in a way, it took me out of my head. It kind of, in some ways, put me in my head because I do find so many things about the human experience interesting. And then I'll ponder that and daydream about that and wonder about that. But I wasn't over analyzing in the way or trying to fix myself in the way I had been my whole life with insomnia, which was looking for something external. What is going to fix me? What is going to make this go away? What is the answer? Who's got it for me? It was never outside of me. It was always within me. So that sentence, isn't that interesting, really helped me a lot. And quite honestly, it helps me out today. It helps me in my day-to-day life. It keeps life interesting. Isn't that interesting? If someone disagrees with me on a completely different level, like they're on one side of the bridge and I'm on the other, I'm much more ready to go to, isn't that interesting? What has their experience been that they have that view? What has shaped that for them? Isn't that interesting? So I hope that something with this one sentence is helpful for you and maybe trying it on, seeing what your brain does with it. And over time, this has kind of become the default sentence of my life. Isn't life interesting? Thanks for joining me on the podcast. I'm Beth Kendall. Your body knows how to sleep, and that's never going to change. I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here today. If you love what you heard on today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. And if you need more support with your sleep, join me in the Mind Body Sleep Mentorship. This 3-month one-on-one program will transform your relationship with sleep so you can get back to living the life that you love, free from the fear of not sleeping. Head on over to bethkendall.com for more details. I'll see you next time.